Ho, ho, ho! Merry Christmas!
Merry Christmas and welcome to Movies on the Brain. I'm Jason. On this joyous Christmas day, we're celebrating with a review of the holiday favorite, The Santa Claus. Directed by John Pasquin, this charming film stars Tim Allen as an ordinary man who unexpectedly becomes Santa Claus. Filled with magic, laughter, and heartwarming moments, Santa Claus captures the true spirit of the holiday season. This is a spoiler review, so if you haven't seen this festive classic yet, you might want to come back after you've seen it. Today we'll unwrap the delightful story, memorable performances, and the magical elements that make the Santa Claus a timeless Christmas movie. Let's dive into the holiday cheer and explore why this film continues to warm hearts year after year. Now let's see how it did in the box office. The Santa Claus opened in theaters on November 11th, 1994 with a budget of $22 million. During its 9-week 1994 theatrical run, it earned a total of $144 million domestically and $165 million internationally. The opening weekend of its 1994 release saw it earn $19.3 million, finishing number 2 in the box office, only behind Interview with a Vampire: The Vampire Chronicles, which also opened the same weekend. Santa Claus managed to hit number 1 in the box office 2 weekends in a row during its initial run, those being Thanksgiving weekend and the first weekend of December 1994. Its final week of its 1994 run saw it earn $2.1 million, finishing its 1994 run in the box office at number 10. It had a re-release in November of 2020, and during its 2-week theatrical run, it brought in $706,000 domestically and $13,342 internationally, bringing its 2020 worldwide total to $724,352. Now let's get to the plot. Scott Calvin is a divorced father and ad executive with a young son, Charlie. Unfortunately, Scott and his son aren't very close as Scott spends a lot of time at work. On Christmas Eve, Charlie comes over to spend the night with Scott before going back to his mother's on Christmas Day. That night, they are awakened by a clatter on the roof. Going outside to investigate, Scott can see someone on the roof. He yells at the trespasser, which causes the man to lose balance and fall to his death. He later appears to be Santa Claus. Santa magically disappears after his fatal fall, but his familiar red and white suit remains. Dot and Charlie find a card in the pocket which reads, "If something should happen to me, put on my suit. The reindeer will know what to do." Santa's sleigh and 8 reindeer are found perched atop the house. Scott puts on the suit to please Charlie and begins delivering toys from rooftop to rooftop. Their final stop is the North Pole. The head elf, Bernard, shows Scott a tiny inscription on the card which says that upon the death of the previous occupant, whoever wears the suit assumes the identity of Santa Claus and all the responsibilities that go with it. This is known as the Santa Claus, as stated by Bernard. You put on the suit, you're the big guy. In other words, he's now Santa for life. He also gives Charlie a snow globe. Bernard also tells Scott that he only has 11 months until next Thanksgiving to get his affairs in order before becoming Santa full time, which he tries to refuse. Bernard tells Scott firmly he does if tells firmly tells Scott firmly he does if he does drop the role, he will be disappointing all the children in the world in the belief that Christmas itself will go well as well. Then he meets an elf named Judy who gives Scott some pajamas and a warm drink. Sensing something is wrong, she talks to him. He explains that he stopped believing in Santa years ago, yet now he has to believe again. Judy assures him that seeing isn't believing, but rather believing is seeing, and explains that children don't need to see this place to believe it's real, they just know it is. She says goodnight and gives him assurance. Charlie and he spend the night at the factory. The next morning they awake back in Scott's home, where the only indication of their previous night's adventures is Scott's new silk pajamas with SC. which stands for either Santa Claus or Scott Calvin, monogrammed on them. Scott dismisses it all as a dream. Soon, however, Scott starts gaining weight, and his boss, Mr. Whittle, likens him to the Pillsbury Doughboy. He develops a ravenous taste for Christmas treats, like Christmas cookies and hot cocoa. He grows a long gray beard, and shaving it off has no effect. It regrows instantly. His hair whitens despite all attempts to dye it. He somehow knows who has been naughty and nice, children who somehow know he's Santa despite not dressing the part. Approach him with gift requests. Scott's rapid transformation worries his ex, Laura, and her new husband, Neil, who try to terminate his visitation rights to Charlie. They question Scott's mental stability and believe that his changes are attempts at getting Charlie to like him. Eventually, Scott's visitation rights to Charlie are taken away. Disheartened, Scott begins to lose some of his certainty about his job as Santa. While visiting Charlie on Thanksgiving, Charlie's insistence that Scott is Santa reawakens Scott's magic, and he, with Bernard's help, whisks Charlie away to the North Pole. Laura and Neil, who think Scott has kidnapped Charlie against his call the police to make a massive investigation. Meanwhile, at the North Pole, Charlie helps Scott and the elves perfect a new sled and communication devices. He calls occasionally, but this only reinforces Laura and Neil's belief that he is really being held against his will. Eventually, Scott, as Santa Claus, goes on with his Christmas Eve trip, but is arrested while delivering presents to Charlie's home and is falsely accused of kidnapping him. A team of rescue elves known as the ELFS, Effective Liberating Flight Squad, free Scott from jail by tying up the front desk guard and using tinsel to break through the bars, which Scott is very impressed by, and fly Scott and Charlie home to his parents, to whom Scott/Santa gives the presents they always wanted from his childhood but never got. Laura gets a vintage mystery date game, and Neil gets an Oscar Mayer weaning whistle. It was because of them not getting these presents that they became convinced Santa didn't exist. Laura, finally realizing her mistake of not accepting that Scott is the new Santa, tosses the custody papers into the fireplace and welcomes Scott to come see Charlie anytime he wants. Bernard tells Charlie that the snow globe is magic. Anytime he wants his father to visit, all he has to do is shake it. Neil owes Charlie an apology for refusing to accept that Scott is a new Santa, and Charlie forgives him. After 10 minutes, Charlie shakes the snow globe, and Scott comes back, says he was off to Cleveland, and takes Charlie with him. Now let's take a look at the cast and some other roles they've had since this movie. Tim Allen as Scott Calvin or Santa Claus. Other roles for Tim Allen include Mike Baxter in the TV show Last Man Standing, Buzz Lightyear in the Toy Story franchise, and Doug Madsen in Wild Hogs. Eric Lloyd as Charlie Calvin. Other roles for Eric Lloyd include Little John Warner in the TV show Jessie, Blanky in the Brave Little Toaster series, and Kyle Grant in Dunstan Checks In. Judge Reinhold as Neil Miller. Other roles for Judge Reinhold include Billy Rosewood in the Beverly Hills Cop franchise, Harry in Bad Grandmas, and Walter in Swing Vote. Wendy Crewson as Laura Miller. Other roles for Wendy Crewson include Grace Marshall in Air Force One, Gold in the TV show Grey, and Dr. Dana Kinney in the TV show Saving Hope. David Krumholtz as Bernard. Other roles for David Krumholtz include Isidore Robbie in Oppenheimer, Paul in Down with the King, and Lavish in Sausage Party. Larry Bradenberg as Detective Nunzio. Other roles for Larry Bradenberg include Sam Black in The Last Harbor, Eckford in The Mod Squad, and Stan Grossman in Fargo. Mary Gross as Miss Daniels. Other roles for Mary Gross include Lee Swift in the TV show Boston Legal, Ma Clapper in A Mighty Wind, and Mom in 40 Days and 40 Nights. Paige Tamada as Judy. Other roles for Paige Tamada include young May in Milo and Eleanor in the TV show Evening Shade. Evening Shade. Peter Boyle as Mr. Whittle. Before his passing in December of 2006, other roles for Peter Boyle include Frank Barone in the TV show Everybody Loves Raymond, Father Time in Santa Claus 2 and 3, and Calloway in Dr. Dolittle. Peregrine Mayhem as the voice of the reindeer. Other roles for Peregrine Mayhem include Goldar in the TV show Mighty Morphin Power Rangers, Beast in the TV show Team Knight Rider, and Benny Haha in the TV show Duel Masters. Frank Welker as voices of the other reindeer. Other roles for Frank Welker include Ralph in the 2020 TV show Animaniacs, Garfield in the TV show The Garfield Show, and Azrael in the Smurfs franchise. John Pasquin as the previous Santa. John Pasquin's only other role was the bearded man in Times Square in Jungle to Jungle. Judith Scott as Susan Perry. Other roles for Judith Scott include Maxine Wheeler in the TV show From Scratch, Janelle Cooper in the TV show All American, and Marilyn Jones in Guess Who. Brian Riley as the Tinsel Man. Other roles for Brian Riley include the mortuary worker in Don't Tell Mom the Babysitter's Dead and The Fingerless Hand in Jungle to Jungle. Jane Eastwood as Judy the waitress. Other roles for Jane Eastwood include Norma in Dawn of the Dead, Mrs. White in the My Big Fat Greek Wedding series, and Gloria in the TV show Haven. Bradley Wentworth as the elf at the North Pole. This has been Bradley Wentworth's only role. Kenny Vadas as the ELFS leader. Other roles for Kenny Vadas include Harvey Shane Jr. in the TV show Captain's Courageous, and Tony Peretti in the TV show Wind at My Back. Steve Vinovich as Dr. Pete Novos. Other roles for Steve Vinovich include Senator Kennedy in Worth, Miles in The Intern, and Puffin in the Swan Princess franchise. Azura Bates as the elf in the hangar. Other roles for Azura Bates include the bratty sister in Fly Away Home and Donna in the TV movie The Haunting of Lisa. Tabitha Lupien as a future ballet girl. Other roles for Tabitha Lupien include Becky in Hairspray and Julie Braccio in Look Who's Talking Now. Christopher Benson as Fireman O'Hara. Before his passing in May of 2019, other roles for Christopher Benson include Rusty Kendrick in A Lobster Tale, Mr. Johansson in Detroit Rock City, and William Dorsey in The Cutting Edge. Joyce Guy as Principal Compton. Other roles for Joyce Guy include Phyllis Caulfield in the TV show General Hospital, Mrs. Nelson in Eye of the Hurricane, and the flight attendant in Moneyball. Laura Catalano as Veronica. Other roles for Laura Catalano include Sandy in Foolproof, Lorna Queen in How to Deal, and Quinn in Water Damage. Lachlan Murdoch as the kid at the soccer field. Other roles for Lachlan Murdoch include Bernie in Golf Punks, Constable Henry Higgins in the TV show Murdoch Mysteries, and Blake Hayden in the TV movie Loyal Opposition. Gene Mack as Officer Newman. Other roles for Gene Mack include Tom in The Second Time Around, Lenny in Down the Road Again, and Felix in the TV movie Jump In. Scott Wickware as Officer Malone. Other roles for Scott Wickware include Ancient Wallace in The Tuxedo, Cree in Trader, and Ed in Poker Night. Michael Caruana as the arresting officer. Other roles for Michael Caruana include Pawnbroker in Naked Lunch, Cornelius Booth in Good Wife's Guide to Murder, and Alex Reznor in Owning Mahoney. Jesse Collins as an ad executive. Other roles for Jesse Collins include Hank Katz, the TV show Ren 1010 K9 Cop, Bush in Iron Eagle 2, and Sandy Beach in the TV show Rescue Heroes. Ron Hartman as Judge G. Whalen. Other roles for Ron Hartman include Errol in Anthrax, the cemetery minister in Getting Away with Murder, and Howell in Double Negative. Jack Newman as a Santa in the Street. Other roles for Jack Newman include Izzy Byrne in Hollywoodland, the history teacher in Mean Girls, and the economics teacher in Cocktails. Gordon Maston as the desk sergeant. Other roles for Gordon Maston include the New York bus driver in Day After Tomorrow, the conductor in Source Code, and the bartender in The Quest. Jimmy Labriola as the truck driver. Other roles for Jimmy Labriola include Vinnie Baroni in the TV show Home Improvement and the fight bookie in Joe Somebody. Bob Dermer as Puppet Punch. Other roles for Bob Dermer include Grumpy Bear in the Care Bears franchise, Ralph Raccoon in the TV show The Raccoons, and Jacko in the TV show The Neverending Story. Dennis O'Connor as the mailman. Other roles for Dennis O'Connor include Robert Williams in The Conspiracy, Jake in the Dark, and the narrator in The Last Hit. Philip Williams as the sharpshooter. Other roles for Philip Williams include Danny in Tommy Boy, playing in Pippi Longstocking, and Crutch in Jason X. Cody Jones as Street Child 1. Other roles for Cody Jones include Timmy in Pushing 10, Bear in the TV show Franklin, and Danny Anderson in the TV show Goosebumps. David Paul Grove as the waiter. Other roles for David Paul Grove include Pom Pom in Elf, Doc in the TV show Once Upon a Time, and Johnny in the TV show Ed, Edd n Eddy. Zachary McLemore as Bobby. Other roles for Zachary McLemore include Norman in Passenger 57, Zach in My Girl, and Caleb Leonard in the TV show Dr. Quinn Medicine Woman. Nina Kogue as Puppet Judy. Other roles for Nina Kogue include Muffy in the TV show Today's Special, Norbert in the TV show Book Mice, and Crystal in the TV show Groundling Marsh. Peter Kosaka as the Japanese businessman. Other roles for Peter Kosaka include young Mako's father in Pacific Rim, the German guest in Rollerball, and the duty officer in Resident Evil Afterlife. David Sparrow as Bobby's dad. Other roles for David Sparrow include Josh's dad in Serendipity, Daddy in the TV show My Roommate's an Escort, and Uncle Larry in Moon Point. Nick Knight as Clinton. Other roles for Nick Knight include John Reed in Jane Eyre and Prince Horace in the TV movie The Whipping Boy. Honestly, I almost forgot how good this movie truly is. It's easily one of Tim Allen's best. I think Toy Story is just slightly beats it as far as my favorite Tim Allen's movies go. Judge Reinhold was just catching strays left and right from everybody in this, and it was actually really funny to see. Eric Eric Lloyd was so good here, and I'm so glad they didn't recast Charlie in the sequels or the TV show. It just wouldn't have felt right. I think it's funny that Denny's waitress and the elf that showed Scott his room had the same name. I never put that together until rewatching it for this review. To me, the only time the CGI really looks bad is the first flight of the reindeer when coming off of Scott's roof. But other than that, I really think it looks great. And I never caught the elves when Santa leaves Charlie's house when the cops are trying to arrest him. And then I never noticed that or any of the other times about uh, the elves that I'll be mentioning in the fun facts here in a little bit. And uh, one of my favorite parts in this was at the end when Santa drops Charlie off and Neil confronts him, reverting to a child for a split second. Then he calls it all an act as Bernard shows up and then disappears. Such a fun moment with the psychiatrist looking like he's losing his mind. Also, fair warning, during the fun facts I found out about this movie, I found a massive list of actors considered for Scott, Laura, and Neil. I saved those lists for the end of my for the end of the fun facts. And let's get into those fun facts right now. One of the children in Charlie's class during Parents' Day is an elf with pointed ears, which can clearly be seen when Charlie pulls the snow globe out of his pocket. When Charlie tells the class that his dad is Santa Claus, the elf boy is the only one who doesn't laugh. For 1 week in November 1994, Tim Allen had the #1 movie at the box office, #1 rated television show in Home Improvement, and the #1 New York Times best-selling book, and it's Don't Stand Too Close to a Naked Man. This was actually the first lead film role for Tim Allen. The dance that Tim Allen does during the montage before his second Christmas Eve was all improvised and done in one take. And the director kept it in because it was so good. Tim Allen underwent 4 to 5 hours of makeup and prosthetic applications to transform into Santa, not including the 2 hours it took to take it all off, and had to wear multiple fat suits during filming, which took place in the middle of summer. Because of the latex, Allen experienced heat rashes, scars, scratches, and infection. There was a time limit on how long he could be in the suit while filming, maxing out at 6 hours because of the poor ventilation. They got better and better at air conditioning me, just keeping me calm, Allen told ABC News of the later films. Eric Lloyd wore fake teeth for the film. He accidentally knocked out his front teeth before filming began. Home Alone director Chris Columbus was in contention by Disney to direct. However, Columbus turned it down in order to make Mrs. Doubtfire instead. When Scott and Charlie are being seated at Denny's, there's a boy putting on a coat who then watches them sit down. The boy has pointy ears, marking him as an elf. Robin Williams, Tom Hanks, Chevy Chase, John Ritter, and Kurt Russell, Tom Selleck, Bill Murray, John Travolta, Rowan Atkinson, Jerry Steinfeld, Jeff Bridges, Mel Gibson, Dennis Tobin, Alan Rickman, Mike Myers, Patrick Swayze, Arnold Schwarzenegger, Michael Keaton, and Harrison Ford were all considered for the role of Scott Calvin in Santa Claus. John Ritter, Jeff Daniels, Stanley Tucci, Bradley Whitford, Steve Guttenberg, Rick Moranis, Ryan Stiles, Alan Ruck, Dudley Moore, Lance Kinsley, John Hurd, Ted McGinley, and Christopher McDonald were all considered for the role of Neil Miller. Trisha Clarkson, Liza Minnelli, Pamela Reed, Sally Field, Renee Zellweger, Andy McDowell, Goldie Hawn, Bonnie Hunt, Mary McDonnell, Jennifer Grey, Susan Day, Marie Winningham, Nicole Kidman, Patricia Hetten, and Kate Burton were all considered for the role of Laura. Thank you for spending part of your Christmas day with me here on Movies on the Brain as I reviewed the Santa Claus. I hope this review brought some holiday cheer and nostalgia to your day. If you enjoyed, please like, share, and subscribe to the channel. I'd love to hear your favorite moments from the movie or any other holiday classics you enjoy, so leave a comment below. Have a wonderful Christmas filled with joy and warmth, and I'll see you in the next review. Happy holidays.